The Western Australian government will get an extra $6.6 billion from the Australian taxpayers in the coming financial year, thanks to its GST deal with the federal government. Economics reporter Tom Crowley is in Canberra. Hi Tom, so how is the GST distributed and who are the winners and losers this year?
Well, it's the perennial question, who wins and who loses when the GST pie is carved up. We've seen from the federal agency, the independent agency that does this, their proposed split for the 2026-27 financial year. The biggest loser in terms of share shift is New South Wales. It goes backwards a little bit because there was an assessment of its need to spend on natural disasters, as it happens, went down a little bit, so it gets a little less. Queensland, on the other hand, its ability to raise mining royalties went up a little bit. So Queensland gained in a share. These are the vagaries, I think you'd say, of the GST system that state treasurers pretty routinely complain about when these distributions go up and down. But none of them can really be said to be losers this year because the GST pool overall, or the size of the pie, if you like, grew by so much that in a sense, everyone's a winner. New South Wales might have gone backwards as far as its share is concerned, but even it will get a little bit more GST money next year than it has in this financial year, to the tune of about $300 million extra dollars for New South Wales, as much as $1.6 billion for Queensland. Again, for Victoria as well, $1.4 billion extra in GST for that jurisdiction. But as usual, when it comes to this distribution over the last few years, the big winner, as you mentioned there at the beginning, is Western Australia. $6.6 billion, all because of this deal that Scott Morrison struck back in 2018 with the state. These things that I mentioned about mining royalties, about natural disaster spending, all of these things you might wonder what they have to do with the GST. Well, the system that every state and territory has used for a long while now is an assessment based on not a population share, where each state gets, based on how many people it gets, a constant share of the GST. It's instead based on an assessment of what amount of revenue can a state or territory raise by itself, and what sort of need levels does its population have. It's a scaling system that's applied that means that the Northern Territory, for example, which has a poorer population and less ability to raise revenue, it gets 5 times its population share in recognition of that. Tasmania, another poorer state, often gets the same treatment, but the wealthier states that the assessment is made by the national government that they can look after themselves, they tend to get less. And WA, with its mining royalties, has gotten a lot less for a long time than its population share. That's where the Morrison government agreed to set an artificial floor. WA operating on its own system, the extra money topped up from the rest of the federal budget, not GST money. And that's where the extra $6.6 billion this year comes from. And over the life of the deal so far, it means an extra $36 billion for Western Australia. Saul Eslake, the Tasmanian economist, is among those who says that this is an unfair deal, that WA, because it has the capacity to pay, shouldn't be getting this extra money, and that it's bad for the federal budget because of all these extra billions that I mentioned that have to make the deal work. From a WA perspective, it's all about fairness. They've never liked the fact that they're getting below their population share. They say it punishes them for their mining industry, for the exports that support the national economy. But it is an eye-catching amount of money. When you put it in total figures, WA gets $9.3 billion this year. It would have had just 2.7 under the old rules. That's the very significant, more than 3 times more money going to the taxpayers of Western Australia from the federal government because of this deal struck under Scott Morrison but supported by Anthony Albanese. It's going to come into view again in the year 2029 because at the moment that's when this deal is due to run out. The Albanese government has been strongly supportive of it, sees it as really key to its political appeal in Western Australia, where the Labor Party is utterly dominant. The WA government continue to campaign for this deal to be retained. No doubt it will loom as an issue in the next couple of years for the Albanese government. But once again, when the pie is divided, it's Western Australia which is the big winner.